to you today. So
That'll teach you.
I know. Here we are. It looks like we're live.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're live.
we're going.
Hello, and welcome to the Power of You, the decisions
Dun, dun,
model,
dun.
the decisions module. Hi, I'm Blaine Bartlett.
I'm Dolan White. Welcome, 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 welcome.
And folks, we got I think a real interesting session for you today. On this Power of You series, we talk about leadership, and leadership has a number of different permutations to it.
Oh,
Not the least of which is, how do leaders make decisions? And and that becomes an important topic because the decisions we make determine the future we have.
yeah.
Yes.
What?
Who said that?
What? It's so true. It's fun because not long ago I was teaching decision making with one of my clients, walking them through a coaching exercise, and we were talking about that. And I asked them the question: how many decisions does a leader do you make in a day?
Yep.
And it's, then 6, 10, like, okay, couple more, maybe exponential numbers.
Add another zero in there.
Yes, another zero. So today is we'll talk a little bit about for the sake of what today. We'll kind of give them a recap, but today is kind of step one in a process that we talk about from a decision making process. So.
Yeah, and this is not going to be a one and done on decision making. Yeah.
Oh
no, we've got a whole series of content and conversations set up for anybody that's listening here, anybody that's interested in being a more effective leader.
Mm-hmm.
It is a function of the decisions that you make. It truly is. What do you get people to line up around? Well, you get them to line up around and execute off of decisions. The quality of those decisions makes a big deal, particularly when you put it in the context of the way that we define leadership, which we'll get into in just a little bit of time. I'm going to ease into this.
Tease it.
So for those of you that are watching and you don't know who I am, I'm Blaine Bartlett. I mentioned my name. I've got literally over 4 decades of work experience in leadership development. I've led large organizations. I've worked with CEOs all over the country, all over the world. I literally have taught and coached and consulted with over 300,000 people. And have touched, well in excess of 1 million people as a consequence of that. And all of it's focused on how do you become more effective as a leader? Because leaders become the pinch points in almost every organization I've ever worked in. The effectiveness is a real big deal. And most leaders that I've worked with have blind spots. And those blind spots create big holes that they find themselves falling into. So that's a little bit of my background. Dr. White?
So I'm Dolan White. I'm the only Dolan you'll find on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Dolan out there. I challenge people to find another Dolan. And I have similarly, as you can tell, my hair is a little whiter than Blaine's. It's probably, it didn't live as good as Blaine did, but again, similarly, a little over 40 years experience. I've been blessed in my career to be a strategic leader within organizations and build large teams of bunches of people, thousands of people, to have an opportunity to travel all over the world and talk about leadership, ethics, professionalism, the topics that are critically important. I've been a CEO, chief operating officer also as well. And, our intention for the reason why Blaine and I do this is we really believe that it's critically important that when you, and our experience, our knowledge that we share with you comes from our experiences, and by doing a couple things wrong once or twice, and this is our opportunity to come share this with you, talk about the content, talk about what we've learned, help you on your path. Hence the title, Power of You. This is all about you, not about us, and it's a chance really just to help you learn from things that we've done and things we've taken away and lessons we've learned from other great leaders during our paths, so that you can grow your career, transform the way you think about leadership, and take great care of your people. and have a good life. That's what we're here for. So.
Yeah, and all of this, I mean, everything that we're doing here is in service of actually a fundamental question. How do I scale my business? How do I scale my business? And I mean that in the context, the broadest possible context, actually. Not it's so if I'm a solopreneur, entrepreneur, I've got a business, I've reached a certain threshold, certain plateau. How do I scale it to that next level? Because what got me here won't get me there. So our conversation isn't about anybody being a better version of themselves. We're really looking at how do you transform, how you think, how you behave, and how you actually go about leading an organization, whether it's a team of people or whether it's a large enterprise. That transformation opens up different possibilities. You're not going to scale by just simply being a better version of what you already are. That is not the way this works. And embedded in that are the kinds and quality of the decisions that you make, which is where we're going with this. And it is, to Dolan's point, all about the power of you. That's all we're looking at here. So when we're thinking about this in this context here, leaders lead decisions. Yeah. And here, just a couple of different, 5 basic points here that influence how leaders lead decisions. And when you look around your organization, particularly as you start, again, thinking about how do we scale this? How do we get to a different level, a different platform, a different plateau? There's information everywhere. And, so that we've got, what direction do I take? What do I pull? What do I, where are the levers? All of a sudden I got more levers than I can imagine anymore. So information overload and uncertainty can lead to paralysis, decisional paralysis. And the default oftentimes in decisional paralysis is we make the same decision we made last week or last month or last year, which actually puts in motion a whole set of circumstances that gets us the same result that we're dealing with today. Nothing has changed. So we just, hopefully in that kind of scenario, we got to be a little bit better version of it, but nothing has changed. Nothing has changed fundamentally. And the
why am I not getting a different result? What the heck?
Different result. Crazy. Insanity. Cognitive bias, subjective judgments. Most people, in my experience, are in a position of really not knowing who they are. And I mean this in the context of this particular line item: cognitive biases, subjective judgments. Decision-making is informed by the subconscious in a dramatic way. And by subconscious, I mean, it's in the dark. We don't know really what's triggering. We've got this emotional trigger, this emotional reaction to something that's going on. And we go, ready, fire, aim. And next thing we know, we got the same result we had last year. Maybe a 3% improvement. By accident. And then we got some paralysis that begins to creep in when we're faced with hard decisions that need to be made. Organizational politics, conflicting agendas, those sorts of things begin to skew the decision-making process in favor of a status quo, which doesn't serve anybody in terms of being able to scale to a different level of success. And embedded in that, obviously, is risk aversion of, what happens if I make a decision and it doesn't work? People don't like to fail, and failure is the only way you're going to grow. There's a real interesting paradox there.
I can lose my job. Somebody's going to fire me. So instead, I won't make a decision. Right. I'll just hunker down and sit here.
And then, particularly if you've got investors or if you've got cash flow situations going on, balancing short-term pressures against the long-term for the sake of what a long-term vision. We'll talk about this one in some detail as we go into this series on decision-making. So leaders lead decisions. These are some of the things that every leader, whether you're a solopreneur with a 2-person team or a 4-person team, or you're leading a large team within an organization, you're going to be running into these things. And so are your people. And this is where execution gets to be difficult.
Yeah, so true. So true. So I love Drucker. I put Drucker out of the air every now and then. And this was one of my favorites when thinking about this topic, Blaine. It was just around whenever you see a successful business, someone made courageous decisions. Somebody made a tough choice, called the ball, had the courage to step forward. A courageous decision was made, and it harkening back to that previous slide. That sentence fits in there when you're making a courageous decision. And what we're going to be talking about is, so how do you make the best possible courageous decision that you can make? Sooner or later, you have to decide.
Sooner or later.
How do you do that? What pieces fall into that?
Exactly. So we've got some models that we're going to be sharing with you. And those of you that have seen this series, the front end of the series where we were actually focusing more on the generic leadership component of it, have seen this particular slide. But we want to use this as a placeholder. Everything that decisions revolve around and are made through come into contact with these two models, these reference models.
Yeah.
I'll explain part of it. Dolan will pick up the other half of it here. The leadership universe model. Yeah. The why, what, how, the top tier, those top three pieces are the vision, strategy, tactics area. And that's where most decision-making education actually comes into play here. We're going to be looking at not only that, certainly we're going to be looking at that in this series on decision-making, but we're more interested actually on the mindset and what it makes possible when you begin exploring that mindset. So when you're looking at confirmation bias, when you're looking at subjective information that influences what you're doing, where does that come from? Well, that comes out of your mindset. And the mindset almost always is literally out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
95% of the behaviors that adults engage in are not consciously directed. Those behaviors are moved by things that are in the unconscious domain. And that's where mindset comes into play here. And that area of spirit and soul, we reference that because we're really looking at, do you do things in the spirit of what the organization was designed to do to begin with? The spirit of. Spirit is aliveness. And if you're looking at emotional engagement on the part of your teams and the people that you're in, whether it's your actual working team or whether it's the customers and the vendors that you're interacting with, are they emotionally engaged with what you're up to? When you begin to pay attention to these two areas, mindset and spirit and soul, the access to those areas, all of a sudden you start getting a transformation in your approach to why, what, and how. And that's where this leadership universe comes into play here. It's all built on a foundation that is supported by 4 fundamental pillars.
And those pillars.
How was that for a segue?
Those pillars are there on the screen.
It out here.
In short, it is, there is when you talk about mindset, there's a lot of folks that talk about mindset but when you are working at that level with your organization, regardless of the size of your organization, there are components. So now what do I do with it? Now, how do I move that forward so I get to an outcome? And outcomes are different, or my worthy ideal. We'll get into that very briefly today, but how do I move that forward? And there's 4 components to that I talk about and work with my clients on and our clients. And the very first is trust and autonomy, to create that authentic trust between you and the team and you, and which gives them permission to be autonomous, to go try, to have the will to try. Trust creates that. And then communication and transparency. A lot of time there's a lot of conversation around communicate, make sure you're communicating, and there's a cadence and there's a lot of mechanics that go into that. But there's an intention that lives within communication that creates that bond that deepens trust. And transparency is that willing to be truthful in a proactive manner so that you increase the depth. Growth and innovation, 2 very different things. Growth is that opportunity for you to exceed, to grow past the outcome that you're looking for. And innovation is that opportunity to think beyond where you are today, which is a component of mindset, the willingness to be inventive, to get beyond that. I don't know, there was some guy that invented a light bulb and he said, he never failed, right? He just had 10,000. And anyway, we'll get into that another day. And then systems of accountability. Systems of accountability is that commitment that we make to each other. It's not a Trello board or Monday.com or, the 1,000 ways we can manage a project. Accountability means we've made a commitment to each other and we live into those commitments together. And that system of accountability gives us the ability to measure our path so that we understand where we are and to tune up, tune down on our outcomes. So you'll hear us talk about these in each time, all the times that we're together, but they're really very, very closely coupled with mindset, spirit, and soul. And then how do I execute on that inside of our company, which leads our organization, which leads to the how, what, and why, leads to what you do there. But without those things in place, the top three are virtually meaningless. You can't sustain based on the just why, what, and how alone. So.
And which is why we're looking at this model here, and we're positioning it against decisions, because decisions are almost always made in most organizations with the why, what, and how, as
Yes.
the primary magnifying glass. And if you're not taking into consideration these these bottom two layers here, your decision making is going to be weak at best. It truly is. You're going to be making weak decisions. And those are not going to serve you if you're looking to actually scale your business into a whole completely different way. Yes. So this opens up the question about, how do you lead and what is leadership? And we're just real briefly, we have a very specific definition with this. Mm-hmm. Leadership's the activity of influencing others in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal. This definition is a very specific definition. You won't find this in Webster's or in the Cambridge or the Oxford Dictionary. We look at this because it's an action-oriented definition. Influencing, it takes command and control out of the conversation. Influencing has to do with state of being. It has to do with your presence. It has to do with the motion that you cause, the action that you cause just by showing up. Are people attracted to you or are they repelled by you? Very literally, I'll put that in black and white. Co-creation, ownership transfers. So it's not my idea as a leader anymore. Now it's our idea. And when ownership transfers, emotional engagement gets created. And then coordinated movement, if you're doing this well, if you're making the right kind of decisions that are organized around scaling your business to a completely different level, you are going to be entering unknown territory. And because you're in unknown territory, you're going to step on each other's toes, guaranteed. People have preferences. So how do you actually do a dance in unknown territory? Coordinated movement. And one of the organizing principles here has to do with, and this is where the decision really becomes important, the decision process really becomes important. It's in pursuit of a worthy ideal. And this takes short-term considerations and balances them against the long-term vision of the organization. And if you don't have that worthy ideal, which is different than vision, you're going to be not making the kinds of decisions that you need to be making that will transform not only you and your people, but it'll transform your organization. So that's what we're really looking at doing here, is using this leadership model as a way to look at what it is that you're doing relative to the decisions that you're making.
Yeah.
And this for the sake of what? I want to just real quickly, and then we're going to move directly into a decision model here. For the sake of what is not your vision. I want to be real clear about that. For the sake of what is not your vision. The vision is a picture of what that for the sake of what might look like, within a certain time frame, but it is much, much deeper, much richer, much broader than that. It's not your goals or your objectives. It's the answer to what matters. And with a tip of the hat to Simon Sinek here, this is not about why we exist as an organization. This is about what matters as a consequence of why we exist. What matters? That's an emotionally tethered question. It's tethered to an emotional dynamic. What's important to me? What do I get to have, do, or be? What do we get to have, do, or be that wouldn't happen if we weren't doing who we are, if we weren't doing who we are? Yeah, it is the worthy ideal. That for the sake of what is the worthy ideal out there in the future.
It's funny about this, and we'll get into the decision part here to talk about kind of this first step in decisions, but I'll give a practical example maybe to this. So to offer some clarity and coaching on with one of the clients, and they happen to be an organization that works with people to write books. There's more they do that, but I'll just leave it as simple as that. And in the conversation talking about their goal for this year. So the goal is to go from here to here by X amount of period of time. And when we got into the conversation about worthy ideal, it took us longer to get into the root of the worthy ideal as to what mattered, what really mattered. And the worthy ideal ultimately ended up with a very simple statement so that people can tell their story.
Yeah.
That was the worthy ideal. And that immediately crystallized the goal. And it's like, so we're doing all of this so they can tell their story. There you go. That's the worthy ideal.
And then, yep.
All of that matters. Yep. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, now you've got a reference point for making decisions.
Right.
That is different than a goal or an objective.
Yeah. Which is a very important thing. And it instantly gelled 9 people on the team together. That's the worthy ideal.
Yeah.
So that people can tell their story. Anyway, we'll go on from there, but that is just an example. It's fun as we experience this together. So
yeah, I love this. So that for the sake of what leads directly into this little S curve here that we've got. So you're on a roll here. I'm going to just kind of let you continue to fill in the blank. So we've got the for the sake of what, that worthy ideal.
The worthy ideal.
What happens next?
Since I've been coaching all day long. So first of all, let me point out that you'll see six numbers on here, and our intention is, as Blaine mentioned earlier, our intention is that we'll be talking about each one of these each Thursday at noon, and other topics as we go along. But for the next several Thursdays, we're focused on each of these steps. So that's what this arc represents, is through a process, and then ultimately we'll recap and pull it all together. But today, for the sake of our conversation, is we really want to focus in on alignment. So we have our worthy ideal, which is our for the sake of what. And we'll as we head into this just a little bit, I want to spend some time with mission and core values. But the very first question is, does this decision align with our mission and core? Are we in alignment? There was probably, I don't know if you remember this, Blaine, but there was about a decade ago, NASA sent a satellite that was going to orbit Mars, and they missed it by 1% in the trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And so it missed the planet completely by a long shot because their alignment was slightly off. And over time, Mars remained where it was supposed to be in its orbit, and their trajectory took them further, not because of a miscalculation, but because they weren't in alignment with the trajectory of the planet as it circled the sun. So when you're out of alignment, the very first thing that happens is you begin to create drift. And when you create drift, you candidly, you just don't recover. There's not a recovery back from, you're going to miss the planet. You're going to miss the goal. So the very first thing to ask yourself is, knowing your mission and core values, is, am I in alignment? Are we in alignment? Does this decision stay in alignment with those? Because we've already established our worthy ideal with our for the sake of what. We've built the worthy ideal. We know what that is. So we start with, am I in alignment? Are we in alignment? Because we're co-creating that I'm creating. Are we in alignment? So, and this slide, now we could spend a lot of time on this slide. I think people get confused, and we talk about this in our challenge, right? When we do our leadership challenge, the difference between mission and core values. So I don't know if you want to talk about this just a little bit.
Well, to the point, mission becomes the organization's guide. It's a clear, you can read the slide as well as I can here, but it's a clear outcome focused statement that defines what I aim to achieve and why it matters. So it's linked into that for the sake of what. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? The mission is the operationalizing, if you will, of the for the sake of what.
Yep.
And then the core values end up becoming principles that inform the kinds of decisions that we make. Are they in, to Dolan's point here, are they in alignment with who we say we are? Who we say we are. And there are myriad examples of organizations that have made decisions that were ethically out of alignment with their core values. The core values were artwork that were up on the wall and nobody paid any attention to them. Enron is probably one of the classic examples of that.
Great example.
When I was doing work with Nokia, I spent about 12 years working with Nokia, developed and led, some of their, a large part of their leadership development function, when the early days when Nokia was really beginning to emerge as a player in the telecom industry. Every single meeting that I attended with Nokia personnel, where we had more than 3 people in the room from Nokia, we always were referencing their 4 core values, particularly if there was a decision to be made. The decisions were run through that value filter. Yeah, and they had only 4 values, but they had literally operationalized them in terms of what do they look like? What's the behavior associated with that value? And then when we're making this decision, it wasn't about getting complete validation here, but if we were going to be missing the mark on one of these values, we wanted to know it up front so we could actually game plan how we're going to address that. Okay, and if it missed more than 2 of them, that decision went back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just went back to the drawing board because now we're out of integrity. We're not just misaligned. We are now out of integrity.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of organizations, it's funny when you mentioned, sorry, Blaine, to interrupt, but I think a lot of organizations, they forget about, it's not a binary decision. Am I in alignment or not in alignment? There are layers. We don't have time in this format to get into it, but the layers that go into it, I don't want this point to be missed, but it is, if you're off by 1, you talk about the risk. If there has to be a threshold that says how far what are we allowed to be off? We're allowed by 0 or by 1. But the component to core values as a leader or in your organization and any organization is to think about the values, not only of the company that you serve, but the values of the people within the body of the company. And are you asking those people to make a decision, take an action, because decisions lead to action, to take an action that's not in alignment with their values? What position are they being placed in? There's a whole darn thing about having people. I don't know what it is about that. It makes it way harder. It just does. It's so easier if we didn't have to lead people. So when you think about those 2, think about core values from that broader context, because if you are out of alignment and you make that decision, and I love your point about Enron, there's an impact, and it's death and taxes. It's a matter of time.
It's a matter of time. Yeah, it is going to happen. It will happen. You will miss the planet.
Yeah, I probably should have used something a little softer than death and taxes. But anyway.
Yeah, when we're looking at mission here, this is where the defining your you comes into play here. And this is both personal, but it's also organizational. The you of your organization as well as the you of you as a leader. The decision that you're wrestling with, it's to the Dolan's point here, these are typically not binary. Yeah. It's on a spectrum. So does this decision that we're about to make one way or the other, does it get us closer to our long-term mission, the realization of our long-term mission? And remember that long-term mission is wedded to that for the sake of what? Does it move us one step closer? Now, here's an example of this. And I used to use this quite a bit, when I was doing some problem scenario structures within organizations. Most people, when they're faced with the problem is typically not the problem, it's my relationship to the problem. If I have a problem with my problem, if I have a problem with having my problem, I'm going to be in a world of hurt here. Most people, because they oftentimes go, God, not again. They've got a problem with the problem. The shortcut decision-making process is, how did we solve this before? Because we want to make it go away. We want to
Yes.
make it go away. So we
Yeah.
look to the past, rummage through this bag of experiences that we've got, and we're pulling out these solutions that we've used before, and we go, this one solved the problem before, so let's use it, because
Yes.
our whole intent is make the problem go away. So as soon as we opt for a solution that we've used before, literally, here's what happens. You introduce back into the system elements of all kinds of things that caused the problem to begin with. So the problems that most organizations and most leaders and most managers and people in organizations are experiencing are iterations of problems that have, the names and faces have been changed to protect the innocent, but it's the same problem disguised in a little bit different way. We select solutions oftentimes simply, and we make decisions about that solely for the reason of getting rid of the problem. We don't see the problem as an opportunity to move us one step closer to who we say we want to be and what we want to deliver into the market. So the alternative here is ask literally this question. If you're clear about the for the sake of what, and you're clear about its linkage to your mission, you start looking for solutions. You start making decisions that have two things involved with it. One, does it address this problem? Number one. But number two, in addressing the problem, does it move us closer to what we say we want, which is where the vision and the mission actually start to be, create some really interesting dynamics. So you start becoming, literally knowing that you're going to introduce, if you pick a different solution, you're going to introduce back into the system something unexpected. You're going to cause a different class of problems down the road here. That's a sign of growth. When you're all of a sudden dealing with a problem you've never seen before, it's kind of like, whoa, that's kind of interesting. That's an indication that things are beginning to transform, not just be better. Better is about getting rid of problems. Transforming is about creating a different class of problems.
Yes.
Which is a real interesting take on it.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, what are the mindset shifts that we have to embrace in order to do this in a different way? We have to stop seeing problems as problems and seeing them as opportunities to move us closer to work. That's a mindset shift. That's a transformation in thinking. And then we, the part of the query here is, how do we use these? Does this decision actually leverage? Do we use it to begin to inform the way our people are thinking? We begin to transform the mindset of the people in the organization. This is where scalability really begins to take hold. It's when people begin to see different possibilities than they've ever seen before. And then you get real practical here, and pragmatic. What are some of the risks and the unintended consequences that I might want to plan for here? So this is kind of how this whole thing actually comes into play when you're using this, your mission linked to for the sake of what as a way to inform your decision making as a leader.
Love that.
So then we work with the core values. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Well, when we think about that, because there are they're cousins, mission and core values are very closely related. Mm-hmm. And if you're in alignment, out of alignment with either one, we use that word alignment a lot, but that's important. And alignment is difficult to determine sometimes. But does this decision, when you think about it, these are some questions you must ask. Does this decision clearly reflect our ethical standards? Where am I not reflecting who we are? And by the way, this happened, a couple of our challenges ago. One of the gentlemen on the challenges said he defined core values as his immovable principles. These are the things that are immovable for me. A core value is immovable, hence the word core. And so, does this decision clearly reflect that and the ethical standards? Am I breaking an ethical bar? Is there a barrier there that I'm crossing? when we're creating our teams, into to the point of the conversation around scale creates there's many benefits to scale creates velocity. There's a lot of things that happen from that perspective. But when you're thinking about it from a core value perspective, does this choice reinforce the organizational culture that you're striving to build? Because we strive to build, and because we're working with people, it's an imperfect process. There's ups and downs through the process. But does this truly enforce that culture we're trying to build? And if I'm out of alignment, we'll talk about the impact of these things momentarily. And then are we adopting, again, back to that mindset layer? Am I adopting a mindset of integrity and authenticity? It's hard to fake authenticity, by the way, that upholds the ethical principles. And I could continue on with the bullets, but it really is, as you kind of see when you begin to talk about the decision and your core values, is what shifts are there? Am I out of alignment? What shifts do I have to make sure that this decision not only meets our goals, strengthens commitments, it's in alignment with our core values, it's in alignment with the culture that we're trying to build, that we're striving to build in our organization, and it keeps us in integrity and authentic to ourselves. And that's a big enchilada.
Oh, it's yeah. Well,
oh yeah.
Don't try to chew this all at once.
Oh my goodness gracious. It's a lot. So that's that. Yeah. So when we talk about core values, and take these away. These are questions to ask and ask your team when you're going through the decision making. And it's not just, are we in alignment with mission and core values? Well, I think so.
Yeah.
Ask these questions, unpack these questions, take the time.
And to that point, decisions made in isolation. I love the segue. Decisions made in isolation from either mission or core values, and typically it's made in isolation from either one of those.
Yeah.
You pay some big prices here. There are some huge prices that get paid when these decisions that are made in an organization aren't referenced against these two core foundational pieces, mission and core values. There's a lack of strategic direction. There's inconsistency and misalignment. The idea of erosion of trust and accountability. We say one thing and then we do another. Missed opportunities for mindset-driven innovation. We're looking here at transforming the way, not just getting a better version of what you're actually doing. Better versions are boring. Better versions really are boring. I want innovation. I want to move to a different platform. This is where emotional engagement happens. And folks, here's a dirty little secret. We're not talking about big decisions. When you start thinking about the numbers of decisions that are made in an organization day in and day out, it is hundreds and hundreds of decisions, small little tweaks, small little things. And the big decisions, those are typically made by the chief honchos in an organization, okay? And they are very few and far between. They're usually involved with capital expenditures. There's strategic consequences, those sorts of things. When you start getting down into the body of the organization, these are people on the line. These are mid-level managers. These are leaders that are leading teams. These are team leaders, team members that are making immediate decisions. Do I do this? Do I talk to him? Do I talk to her? Do I cut them out? Do I not? Do I send? Who do I copy on this email? These are all decisions. And if they're not referenced in some way culturally to this mission and core value conversation, all of a sudden you've got a 1 degree or a half degree misalignment. And that half a degree misalignment, if it's not addressed, begins over time to end up becoming a pretty large vector.
Yeah.
And you've missed the planet. You missed Mars. That's how it happens. It's not the big decisions that cause you to miss Mars. It's the little tiny, medium-sized, small and medium-sized decisions that contribute over time, little by little. A lot, little becomes a lot. And that lot takes you away from where you want to go. How you drive decision-making awareness and consciousness into the organization is your scaling challenge. It is your scaling challenge. That's what we're looking at here.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys can all read, or those who are with us or will watch this in the future, you can read each of the consequences. But the key thing, and I love that point, Blaine, that the key thing is to contemplate, to remember the consequences. Remember the Drucker statement at the beginning. Somewhere, somehow, somebody made a courageous decision, or courageous decision was made, small or large.
Yeah.
And it is the consequence of the decision that ultimately is the consequence was I missed the planet.
Missed the planet.
The consequence was why do I have such high turnover on my team? The consequence was, gee golly whiz, why isn't my revenue growing? The consequence is. So when you think about that, it is the consequences of the nature of the decision, the nature that you make, the way you go through the process of making these decisions that you lead. And there's a list of consequences here: lack of strategic direction. What happens, right, with your team? Inconsistency and misalignment. When they don't like it. One of my favorite things in this statement is it undermines trust.
Yeah.
The cornerstone undermines trust. Misalignment means you don't trust me, I don't trust you. Erosion of trust and accountability. Missed opportunities for mindset-driven innovation. If you're not innovating, you're not scaling.
Simple decision example here. The Challenger disaster. When the Challenger blew up, it was a tiny O-ring. Tiny O-ring. The decision about running that up the chain of command so that people could make a decision about whether go or no go based on some data that was now emerging about what happens when these O-rings get frozen. Well, the decision, and this is where political consequences come into being. Well, I can't decide to run that up because my job is in jeopardy, or it's not my role, it's not my position. These are the small decisions that, because we don't have a culture that values decision making in the way that we're describing it here, you end up not hitting the target, or you have a disaster on your hands. And the Challenger is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Consequences, true. Life and death.
Very true.
Yeah. So what's the next step here? I mean, this is folks, big fire hose. Big fire hose.
Wait. We got 5 more points to talk about.
Yeah. There's not a snowball's chance in hell you're going to remember any of this or all of this or part of this to be able to operationalize it. So partly what we want to do here is just be able to give you some information that piques your interest. And scalability is the number one challenge of successful businesses. Once you've gotten over that revenue hump where you're now actually cash flow positive, you're actually making some headway here, business is working relatively well, the question comes to mind, what's next? How do I go to that next level? That's a function of your decision-making process, and it's constrained by your mindset. Almost always. It's constrained by not only yours, but also your organization. Your organization has one too, your organization's mindset. So one of the things that we want to do is, number one, just recognize that, we're not going to go into any depth on this material on these Thursday sessions. All we're doing are planting seeds. And the real thing that we'd like to set up for you here is an invitation to move, to take an action. Only about 20 to 30% of participants in any kind of professional development program actually follow through on the ideas that they have, the action plans that they've implemented or developed for themselves until they've got some additional support. And the classic example, and I'm not going to belabor this point, is New Year's resolutions. We're into March now. Probably 95% of them have just gone into distant memory for most people because there wasn't a support structure that was designed to make it different.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Transformation is leaving what was behind so that a new possibility emerges. And if I try to just be a better me by losing 10 pounds, a better me, now I've got to transform my lifestyle in order to have that be sustainable. That's what we're looking at here. And regular check-ins and peer groups can boost the follow-through. So, one of the things that we've constructed here, is a couple of different things that we want to, position for you here. Dolan has mentioned a couple of different times a challenge. We have a leadership transformation challenge, and we do these about every 6 weeks or so. March 24th to 28th, a leadership challenge is going to be available to you, and it's 5-day transformation challenge, March 24th to 28th at 9 o'clock p.m. or 9 o'clock a.m. Pacific time. And we're going to be posting information on our various media channels here about registration details and VIP options that you might have here.
Yeah.
The challenge is free. Yeah. The challenge is free. VIP's got a little bit of a price tag to it because we've got some extra things that we put in place there. But registration on this thing is for a free 5-day leadership challenge. And again, we do these on a relatively regular basis, every 6 to 7 weeks, because we're going through content, and none of the challenges are the same. There's a lot of commonality in them, but they're not the same material. We actually vary it up a little bit here. So the invitation that we've got for you is join us with a leadership challenge. Join us on March 24th. Yeah, just kick it off. If this content has been of any interest to you at all, if you're looking to scale your organization, here's an opportunity to get some free advice, some free resources. We'll be giving you all kinds of good stuff, and it's not just a talking head, blah blah blah. This is going to be a working challenge.
Yeah, this isn't this is not the Blaine and Dolan show. You actually get to work and meet other people and do other things. So do.
That's what we got today, folks. But that's all, folks.
No link, no place to go. Watch for information. It's coming March 24th. Come join us. It's 5 hours. We pour a lot into you. So we pour a lot into the you part of the transformation challenge.
Yeah. The power of you. The transformation leadership transformation challenge.
Power of you.
Join us. Yeah. No obligation. Nothing. Nobody's going to reach into your pocket for your wallet or anything here. This is a free challenge. Dolan and I have got gray hair. Honest to God. Yeah. We want the world to work better. This is my For the Sake of What. You see over my shoulder here, the Compassionate Capitalism book.
Yeah.
The world is an opportunity to really transform how it works. And that is a function of decisions that people make on a day-to-day basis. Compassion makes a difference in people's lives. It's not just a soft, chunky, or chunky nougat, but it's not a squishy thing. Compassion has a hard edge to it. Compassion makes we make tough decisions in service of a more effective, more generative For the Sake of What. It's not just about making money. It's about enhancing the quality of life on the planet. That's the For the Sake of What. And these challenges are designed by Dolan and myself to give people access to information about how might you be able to do that more generatively in your own life. That's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at. And both of us come from a position of being a center of distribution rather than centers of accumulation. I've accumulated enough in my life. I'm not interested in accumulating more, but I am interested in distributing what I know. And I know that that's true for Dolan as well. I'm speaking for both of us here. So join us March 24th through 28th, 9 o'clock a.m. Pacific time. It's an hour long. So we're not going to take your whole day, promise. But you will be getting some stuff that you would absolutely want to have in your arsenal. We'll see you then, folks. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching.
Good job, Mr. Bartlett.
You as well. Until next Thursday.
See you then.
Okay.